Okay, fifth graders, we're starting chapter 6, and I think we're going to get through this book before Christmas break, so that's a good thing. Let me bring this down a little bit more here. So the first page here, they're talking about, it says an object is 279.4 centimeters wide. If you divide the object into 10 equal parts, how wide will each part be? It says solve the problem any way you choose. So you could write it down this way, 279.4, and divide it by 10. But remember, anytime you anytime you divide something by 10, all you're doing is moving the decimal over one place. You don't have to do it this way. So the question is, which way do you move the decimal over? Well, if I was to write 279.4, and some of you might get confused about which way to move the decimal, this might help you remember. If I was to multiply it by 10, not divide it, but multiply it, times it by 10, you guys should know by now that the number is going to be larger, 10 times larger. So which way would I move the decimal? Here it's 279. Well, would I move the decimal so it becomes 27.94? No, that's going to be smaller. If you multiply something by 10, it's getting larger. So I'm going to be moving the decimal the other way. So it would become 2,794. So when you multiply something by 10, it becomes larger. If you divide something by 10, which is what I wrote here, then it's going to get smaller. So which way do you think you'd move the decimal? Well, you want it to be smaller, so you're going to be moving it to the left. So anytime you anytime you divide something by 10, it gets smaller. So instead of going through it this way, which would be kind of laborious, just move the decimal over so it becomes 27.94. Oops, 27.94. Okay. All right, down below here it says, what do you notice about the width of the object and the width of each part? Well, if you actually were to do what they're asking you to do up here, each part is the same, what? Length. Each part's the same length. And each part is 27.94, what were they talking about? Centimeters long. Okay. All right, next page. They give us an example here of how can you divide by the power of 10. So typical, the page before you do the guided practice and the independent practice, that's an example. So you can look this over if you want. I'm not going to go through it. I'll just point out that if you look right here, it says find 89.5 divided by 10. Which way do you move the decimal? Since it's being divided by 10, you would move the decimal just one place, so it would become 8.95. Now, what if it was being divided by, instead of 10, what if it was being divided by 100? Well, 2 zeros, 2 places. So you'd move this decimal right here, 2 places. So that would become 0.895. Okay? Remember, when you're dividing something by 10 or 100 or 1,000, the number's getting smaller. And I think you should all intuitively know by now, if you multiply something by 10, 100, or 1,000 or more, it becomes larger. All right. I'm not worried about the convince me at the bottom. You can put a line through that. Let's look at the guided practice here for a moment. Let's see here. Suppose Chandra once wanted to cut the cloth into 10 squared strips. How long would each strip be? Well, I think they're talking about the previous page here. So I'm not worried about number 1 here. Number 2, Krista divides a number, we don't know what that number is, by 10. Then she divides the same number by 50. Which quotient or which answer is greater? How can you tell? If you divide something by 10, let's say if I was to divide this object right here by 10, okay, and I'm going to take a guess here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's pretty close. Did I get that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, if I was to take that same object and divide it by 50, so what's my answer here? If I was to take this number, let's say it was 10. If I was to take 10 and divide it by 10, what do you get? We get 1. All right, 10 divided by 10 is 1. But if I was divided by 50, I mean the parts would be a whole lot smaller. And so which quotient is greater? The one that's being divided by 10 would be much larger. The number divided by 10. Is larger. Okay? All right, number 3. I'll be a few minutes. I'm doing a video. Yeah. That's all right.
A student, Dad came in yesterday. Tracy called about an iPad or something that they had, a computer type thing.
Well, let me talk to you about it in a few minutes here. Okay. All right. It'll take me about 5 minutes here. Okay, so let's look at number, let's see here, 3 through 10, use mental math to find each quotient. So 10 squared, what's another way of, what else do you call 10 squared? Well, it's going to be 100. And we talked about this just a few minutes ago. If it's being divided by 10 or 100 or 1,000, it's going to be a smaller number. So if it's smaller, which way is the decimal going? And how many places over do you move the decimal? Well, that should give you a clue right there. So if we moved it over 1, 2 places, this would become 3.702. How about number 8 here? So it's 2,810 divided by 10 to the 4th. Well, what's another way of writing 10 to the 4th? How many zeros are we talking about there? So that's going to be 10,000. 10 to the 4th, 10,000. So how many places do you think you'd move the decimal? Well, if you look at this one, there isn't even a decimal there. So where do you assume the decimal is when they give you a whole number? Well, it's right here. And how many places over do you move it? 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this becomes 0.2810. All right, I think you guys are good with those. Independent practice here. Yeah, these are all easy peasy. You guys shouldn't have any problems with those. So look at number 16 here. They have 10 with a 0 exponent. And I think we've talked about that before. You know what, if we look at the one just below it here, 10 to the first power, well, what's that equal to? This is equal to just 10. All right, because all whole numbers, you have an assumed exponent of 1. But if you have a number that says 10 with a 0 exponent, that is equal to 1. So 10 to the 0 exponent is 1. So what is any number divided by 1? Well, it's itself, 890.1. It doesn't change. It doesn't change at all. Anytime you multiply a number by 1, anytime you divide a number by 1, it stays the same. It's no different. Okay. Let's see here. Pacific Middle School swim meet. What's the difference between the winning butterfly time and the winning backstroke time? So when we're talking about difference, what are we talking about? Subtraction. And let's see, the winning time for the 100-yard freestyle was twice the time for the 50-yard. What was the winning time for the 100-yard freestyle? You guys could figure that one out. What's the difference between the winning 100-yard, again, difference. We're talking about subtraction. You can do that one. And let's see here, last 2 or 3, reasoning. A pickup truck carries 10 to the third. What's another way of writing 10 to the third? That's 1,000. Identical bricks weighing this much. If the empty truck weighs this much, what is the weight of each brick? Well, first off, explain how you solve it. Well, you're going to have to subtract the weight of the empty truck from the weight of the full truck. All right. Then you should have the weight of the bricks, and they want to know how much each brick weighs. So you're going to have to divide whatever that number is. I'm just going to call it X. I'm going to let you figure that out, and it's going to be divided by this. Okay? Let's see here. Higher order thinking pattern for the answers for each of the expressions below. What do you notice? Well, you'll have to do each one of these. I'm going to put a little equal sign so you know have to solve each one. Shouldn't be too hard. What's the pattern? And then 31 and 32, I think you guys can do on your own. Looks like it's just multiple choice. Okay, that's it.